Tani and Leslie have dedicated their lives to the study and exploration of the human psyche and its relationship with existence through spirituality, psychology, personal development, sexuality, embodiment, and deep relationship with the natural world. They founded the Light Dark Institute out of a passion for sharing the ways that exploring our dark sides can radically awaken and liberate us from the old patterns that have held us back and kept us in judgment of ourselves and the world around us. Their teachings support leaders and change makers to deepen their capacity to lead from love in our evolving world with hearts courageously open to embracing what is. I love that. And thank you both so much for your time. And
Much for having us.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I guess I certainly don't want to be doing a lot of the talking today, but I just wanted to let everyone know how I came across the both of you and the Light Dark Institute. And, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I was actually in another workshop. I was learning a different course completely, PhDJ, and you were both invited on, and it blew me away because I was at the time myself in a space where I was dealing with a whole range of wonderful shadowy beings. And I think, for most people, we reflect on our shadow selves as always being these things in the darkness in the cupboard. And I just love the way that the both of you really expressed a different language around this process and these theories. And it really helped me at the time. And I immediately thought of the people who, follow me, who usually watch the things that I have, and also the people on my channel. So I thought I would love and can't wait to have you and invite you back on to share your wisdom with everyone. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having us. It's really an honor to be here. And to anybody listening or watching, thank you for joining us for this ride. We're just grateful to be here with you.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it. Yeah.
So it's probably the best place to start is to explain a little bit more about what it is that you do and the Institute and how this kind of evolved for you.
Mhm.
Well, just to start, I'm Leslie and this is
I'm Tani.
Tani. We really the foundation of our work really began with our coming together in relationship because we really dove in exploring shadow and darkness together as the kind of focal point of what we were both seeking, and it just opened a lot of doorways within us as we did that. We both done a lot of work before that in different different somatic modalities and energetic work, but that when we came together and started to explore in play our own darkness, there was this massive opening and release of like, wow, it's possible to be this dark, this all these bad things I ever thought, and still feel love, feel loved, feel connected. It actually is more connected. I'm here in my body in person with this person and breaking all my internal rules and how I do that. And it was through us coming together and exploring and in play with each other and the community with all of these things that really started to develop the like dark work as we have it today, which is really all about embodying the parts of ourselves that we reject, deny, repress, wish wasn't there. Embody, like facing it, embodying it, and finding out what's really there beyond what our thoughts are. Because we can spend a lot of time trying to change our judgments and evaluations and thoughts about different parts of ourselves or about the world. But if we just get inside of it and bring it into play and embody it, it actually has this powerful impact of like, oh, there's so much more than my little tiny judgment and story about this part had. And in fact, it's so much more even than even the way that I think about anger or frustration or unworthiness. There's actually so much more available when you get inside and embody it. And we all know this, I feel like, going through living life as a human, that there's there's ups and downs, and sometimes we go into things that are not comfortable. We wish it didn't happen, but we come out the other side being like, wow, I'm so glad I went through that. And our work is really about how to design the play and how to create enough safety for these parts to come out and have that experience, which to our kind of like consciousness can be like an ordeal, but can oftentimes be actually really surprisingly pleasurable and fun and powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just add in a little context to kind of the broader context of the Light Dark Institute. So we call it Light and Dark because we work with light and dark as sort of not just concepts, but fundamental ways of orienting to life. And basically, we consider both very important. The way that we hold the definition of light and dark, well, there's sort of the definition of light as anything that's in the light is like the things that we have approval for, and anything that's in the dark is what we either don't have approval for or can't see. So there's that kind of, the just the blind spots and or what we push away. But when we're thinking of an actual orientation to life and how to actually work with any kind of spot in ourselves, we make a line between what we call light work and dark work. And light work is essentially the path of healing, progress, or change, where we're taking some kind of obstacle, whether it's in ourselves or in the world, and we're saying, you know what, this is not optimal how this is playing out right now, and I really want to change it for the better. My heart cares about this. I want to improve it. I'm going to take a stand, do something different, and make this change, make it heal, make it shift towards the light, towards the vision that I see possible here. So that's light work. And dark work is the path of embracing what is exactly as it is without the need to change it, and really opening to what gifts and wisdom may be here in whatever it is, no matter how dark, how devious, how uncomfortable the thing is. We're saying, actually, I'm not going to try to change this. I'm going to listen to the wisdom that's here. I'm going to look for the gifts that are here, and I'm going to just be with this as it is. And so we consider both of those paths to be equally important. And really fundamentally, what we're up to in the Light Dark Institute is wanting to support people in cultivating the muscles of both so that we actually can all be at choice for how we respond in any given moment. Like something happens internally, some pattern just reared its head. Do I orient to light work and try to change it and grow myself? Or do I orient to dark work and try to really learn from whatever this pattern is, whatever this kind of dark creature in me that just emerged? And same goes in the world around us, whether it's, a conflict with a loved one, or as big as looking out at the world and all of the painful things that are happening in it and saying, light work, okay, I want to actually take a stand for change here, or dark work, can I really embrace what's happening? And for us, when people have the capacity to actually turn to either one, when those muscles of both are developed, that creates an incredible capacity for resiliency and for us to stand in our full power and really live from our hearts, really respond to the world, be with the world, and be able to respond to whatever is happening with love, either through the light or the dark in any given moment. That's kind of the core essence of what we're up to here.
Amazing. I love it. I love how you language all of that. Um, I'm wondering if you can, because I'm just conscious of people who might find this message, that there's already this idea of what shadow work looks like, and especially more and more these days as there are more people turning to understanding that they need to heal in different ways. Um, could you perhaps, in a way, because I feel like the way that you do things is, quite different to other ways, and I'm not suggesting that there's one particular other way, but just to help people understand what that difference might be and what that version of the normal shadow work, if that makes sense as a question.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine we both have a lot to say on this subject. I think one of the fundamental things that's really key in how we work is that at the core, it's all about love. We're really here to, like, there's a deep desire in both of us to just live from love and let that just pour into all the places in the world and in ourselves, especially most importantly where love is not reaching. That there's a real desire to start with the places where it's hardest for us to love and bring the love there, because if we think about all the challenges in our world today, if we could actually love in the places that we find unlovable, it would look radically different. In the places where we either find unlovable or have numbed out, if we could actually love in all those places, it would be so profound. So there's that foundation of love is really the key in what we're doing. And when we go into the darkness, because dark work we put a lot of emphasis on the dark work. It tends to be the thing that people come to us for, although we still include light work and find that important. And so for us, when we're going into the dark, it really is with that quality of love. It's like, how do we actually get into these shadows, get into these things, not for the sake of getting rid of them, because essentially then that's light work veiled as dark work. And when you go into the dark with a hidden light agenda, it doesn't work. It's just not effective, because it's not actually going in for the love and the mystery and the discovery of what's there. So in our work, when we go into the dark, it really is with this sense of like, I'm not going in here to get rid of this. I'm going in here to fall in love with it and find out what gifts it has, find out what wisdom is waiting here for me. And I think that that's just a really big difference with a lot of forms of shadow work that can be out there. And then with that comes a lot of play and a lot of fun as we begin to discover these creatures, these elements of life in us and in the world without the pushing away. There's just a lot of magic that's possible. You want to?
And one thing I would say is like, we really actually put healing as a light intention, right? With the dark, when you're coming at it from a dark approach, there's nothing to heal. Everything is perfect the way it is. It's about experiencing it as it actually is. And through doing it, the one who wanted to heal gets healed, right? It's like oftentimes our darkest shadows are right behind our eyes, are the ones looking out at the world and trying to fix something in here, or this response that's happening out there. But it's the one who's trying to fix it that can often be the one who's least loving, the one who's most bullying, most repressive, most can be a tyrant that lives behind our eyes to our own self, because that's how we were conditioned. And so like in our work, it's like, great, so there's a tyrant in there. Who's that one? And who's the one who serves the tyrant? Who's that one? And how to bring those out in play. And because once they come out and play, they're all there to make sure that you're safe. They're all motivated by love. They're like, okay, tyranny is how we keep things under control here and keep us from getting hurt again. Let's do it. We're all on board. That happened at a young age, but then patterns, as if imagine your audience's experience, patterns they continue even when you don't need them in the way that they used to. And so then the light approach to something like that, we're like, okay, like how do I change this pattern and fix this so I stop harming myself and misunderstanding situations and creating communication problems, or seeing everyone outside of myself as a problem, or making, all the different ways we do that in patterns. In the light work, it's like, okay, I want to change that. Okay, what's the dark approach? What are all the parts of me that just love conflict, or that just love like making myself unworthy before everything? There's a part of me that just wants to just be at the feet, just worship, and even though I wish it wasn't there, because it just keeps coming up, and I can't meet my boss, I can't meet my partner, I can't meet my child, because there's a part of me that just worships them because I feel so unworthy. And the light work would be like, okay, how do we address the unworthiness underneath that? How do we heal that? Dark work's like, what is that devotion that one has, and what is to fully get inside of that devotion and fully experience it, embody it, and feel it,
Oh, so many.
and thus experience the love that's behind all
Yes.
of our dark parts.
And that's such a different, like, even as you're saying so many things, I'm like, there is, as you say, in the healing world, there is this idea that, well, we're all broken, just, what is it that we need to fix? And it's this constant idea of fixing and fixing, and there's more and there's more. And it does start to feel like, well, gosh, is this ever gonna, when do I get my gold star? When am I, which is in itself is that, I'm searching for the worthiness. When am I finally okay to be accepted? And then again, what you're saying and I think this was when I remember you talking in the time when I first experienced your workshop, this idea of just almost making friends with that darker version of yourself, because, that's why they're locked away. They don't see anyone, they don't hear anyone, they're not allowed to be present. And making friends with them is this whole other idea of going, hey, I want to listen to you.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering how does that, with so many people that you've worked with, um, what are the challenges that come up with that? Like that must be a very new concept for people.
One of the biggest challenges is like this is a spot I've been trying to get away from.
Mhm.
Why would I want to go into it? I would
Mhm.
entrain myself more. I would
Mhm.
become more lost in the pattern, more
Mhm.
lost in the anger or the frustration or the unworthiness. Like the whole idea is to exit that. And so
Mhm.
I'm really focusing on how do I create an identity that is feels worthy, right?
Mhm.
And that's a worthwhile endeavor for sure, and I think an essential part to the healing journey. How do we construct new identity? We have this one identity who is this way, and how do we go to another one? So it can be really challenging to that part of ourselves that's really moving away from suffering, to say like, actually, the answer is in suffering. And the reason, and of course, then the answer is not so much to like go into the suffering to suffer, it's go into the conflict of parts to experience the ways you're having actually some pleasurable experiences and even aliveness, and the ways that it actually is serving you, even if the rest of you's like, but not exactly, because I don't want to do it that way anymore. But it's like, yeah, but that's the way, and so it's like having compassion for it, empathizing with the way that it has been loving you and is still trying to love you. But one of the things that I think is, the deepest thing is what we're breaking through is who we've been conditioned to be in order to feel loved. And
Mhm.
so to break through conditioning to feel loved is to risk the possibility that if you leave, if you depart from this path, you may not be loved. This is the way you've always known you could get love, by doing it right, by being interesting, by making sure that you're always showing up for people and doing extra, or by being avoidant and making everybody feel sorry for you, or all the different ways that we are conditioned through our experience. And that's the way I get love. If I'm going to actually do something different, how, where do I source that love from? And so dark work, it's about getting in the roots of love, into those places. One of the ways I like to talk about it is like in development, we have these different parts that are like the first time you get like dismissed by your parent, right?
Talking
Oh,
about in childhood
in
development.
childhood
Mhm.
development, devastating. And there's all kinds of traumas that from the outside even look worse than that. But to the child, all of it's just so impactful, right? It's hard to even know how that impacts us, right? It's like, oh, there's a possibility based on this that I could stop being loved by the old person that keeps me alive. Okay, let's do this. So then you develop a strategy, and that strategy gets developed and formed, and you do that, and then eventually that strategy stops working for you, because it's like, actually, that person isn't dismissing you, they're just having a different thought right now, but you're so convinced that they are, you're going to do all this work. So you try to break out of that pattern, but you keep being rubber band, you keep coming back to it like a rubber band. But if you go into the pattern and into the one who is watching mom and making sure that she loves you, and you get inside of that one's eyes, what the eyes you're looking through is a young part of yourself who, from that point on in your conditioning, is unconditioned, like was protected from conditioning. So there's these amazing revelations that come through of our own original essence beyond conditioning, that when we're willing to like step off, but that it is like stepping off, like, hey, here's a cliff, there will be a bridge, we promise. That's our experience. But you got to actually step off. We can't force you. It's in fact, all we're here to do is make it as clear and consensual as possible for you to step off that
Mhm.
bridge.
I love the way that there's this, because the change to me, this idea of, embracing those parts of you and befriending them and sending them love and understanding them more, it seems like such a different concept from for myself, from what I've been taught and shown, and always that part of, I guess, even in the process of it becoming a shadow, it is told to be quiet and sit down, and you're not helpful. And that's that when you're working with people with those patterns, how you kind of, I guess, work with the resistance. I mean, I know it's one thing to say we just keep loving that part of ourselves, but in reality, when people aren't used to that experience of love, or just saying, "Oh, I'm going to love myself now," it can be, I know from my own experience, challenging. So I'm just curious as to how you can kind of maybe do that in your way.
Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, one important way that we do it is through embodiment, because if we sit there and say, okay, I'm going to love this part of myself, the rest of us would be like, screw you. No, we're not. There's a very good reason not to love this part. But when we get into embodiment, our work involves a lot of embodied play. We tend to do a lot of actually acting out these creatures. We call them the creatures within, acting out this part that's like really just arrogant and aloof, or acting out the part that's really just so needy and really wants your love, acting out whatever these parts are. Because when we get them into our body through play, and we tend to be kind of over the top and like silly and ridiculous and amplified about it, but there's a realness there. There's a deep, profound realness that we're touching, but bringing it into play somehow makes it safer, makes it more permissioned. When we do group workshops, there's a great thing that happens when everybody's getting into embodied play, this sort of sense of discovery of like, oh wait, you mean everybody else here is needy too? Like, oh, it's not just me. Or, oh my gosh, everybody else here is lying and hiding and covering themselves all the time. Oh my gosh. And so there's this release that happens in just realizing, oh, it's no big deal. This is actually just part of being human. So that's a big part of it. And the embodiment really helps too. It's like once we get it into our bodies and we've had a chance to play and discover, like, or with that needy part, like, oh my God, I just expressed how needy I am and how much I want everybody's approval, and I'm still alive. Okay. Like, okay. Oh wow, people are even looking at me with care. Like, oh, okay. And then we can actually start to let the love into these parts of ourselves. So embodiment and play are a really big part of how we begin to get in there.
The other one is we put a lot of attention on, especially in our private work with individuals, on their desires, because oftentimes what we desire outside of ourselves is, maybe always, I don't know if I make that fantasy a statement, but what we desire outside of ourselves is what we desire within, to have that part. Like if we're drawn to powerful people, or people we see as powerful, it's like, oh, and so like how to. Great. So you have that desire, like, and where is your power? And what is it like for you to embody your power? What is the resistance that comes up for you to be that which you seek outside of yourself? And also to like embody and play with those parts in like really fulfilling ways, even like when oftentimes we're seeking something, but because of other parts aren't making it's not allowed. We do it kind of undercover, which oftentimes doesn't work very well. Like if you go after your desires indirectly, you oftentimes get kind of skewed versions of what you were looking for. You're looking for someone who was really powerful, could hold you so beautifully and be amazing. And you found that person, and they were also incidentally barely noticing you, and they were just having their own experience, and you just happened to be fitting into their arms, and then you realize that they were never really holding you, and the drop and the fall and all that stuff, right? But it's like but they're actually, when we get really clear in touch with these desires, like I'm actually seeking the power within, without, you can actually make these like mature choices, of like mature in the sense of like, I'm an adult and I can consent to play, and you're an adult who can consent to play. And even though I know I'm powerful, and even though I know that I'm weak and I'm all these parts, I want to explore this more deeply with someone, and myself. I want to explore this more deeply. And if you have that desire, we can explore this together. So we actually like work with consensual play in the dark, such that you take the unconscious and make it conscious. So like something that only happens as a reality within, when we can externalize it and bring it out into play with another, it becomes a reality without. And we can actually see and experience it. But when we do it unconsciously, it's like when you unconsciously go towards something more powerful than you, then you're always going to, we create this loop, right? Because it's like we eventually we discover we need to come into our own power. So whether it happens through a break in the relationship or through just like disappointment or resentment or all these different ways. Whereas like when we can meet it consciously and consensually and name our desires and learn how to negotiate for them and actually like bring them into play, we can have these like really satisfying experiences for those particular parts and then come back into our wholeness. And that's one of the ways that we play in the dark and also like create like it's like why would I want to go there? Well, because I really want to go there. but I dare not say it. And so like playing with it, dancing with it, and getting to know, that's one of the things that we do for the deeper, darker shadows within is just like coming in with a lot of like love and approval and play and dance with you. And that creates the permission that's needed for like, oh, wow, you're meeting me. I could play with this. Oh my gosh. Okay. Like I actually, instead of it feeling like an ordeal and terrible suffering, it actually feels like an incredible opportunity. And I can't wait to bring it out. And which is another aspect of going into the dark. It's these are parts of ourselves that are ready to come out of the cages they've been kept in. There's a release from the prison. There's a release from the constant being tortured or killed over and over again, which are these kind of on an energetic level, what kind of happens within us.
If I'm hearing this for the first time and I'm getting kind of into the idea of, okay, I want to really explore the dark parts and see how that all works and emerges. Where does where did the action, and I don't know how big a conversation this is, so where does the trauma part fit into this process? Because I know that that will be a question for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super important. And I'm really
Mm.
glad that you brought it up. And that's why in our work, we really hold light work and dark work as equally valuable, because when like dark work only works if it actually can open. But if we start like one of the things that we will say sometimes is like if we hold dark work as like the path of yes, or we're yesing whatever is, and light work is actually the path of no. It's where we're saying no, not this, something different. And if we knock at the door of yes a couple of times and it doesn't open, get thee to know. It means like, don't try to force the yes if it's not working, because if it's not naturally opening, because it can actually be re-traumatizing to try to go into those places to kind of, grab ourselves and try to pull ourselves across a certain finish line or force ourselves into something. If that's not ready to open, it's because there is trauma there that is actually keeping that door closed, and there's a wisdom to that. And then it's time to go to the light work and actually go to the healing, seek out whatever forms of resourcing, and at the most fundamental, the kind of like core bedrock sort of thing that we always come back to is, can you see the scared little one inside of you? And can you find whatever access you have to resource, to your own adult self or some higher wisdom self or whatever it is, and let that part of you hold that scared little one. And just coming back to that, even at its most basic, like that's such an important skill to build. And absolutely, like if you start to go into the dark and like terror comes up, I mean, it's a little bit tricky, right? Because terror can come up and still it can open. But it's that feeling of like, as I move towards it, is my body opening? Even if I'm scared, is that a terror that feels like energy rushing through me, but there's still breath and there's this sense of expansion? Or is it like terror and my breath is catching and my body is shutting down and I'm feeling more tight? If you feel that shutting down, that is a form of no. And it's really important to listen to that. It's really important to honor that and to let it take as long as it needs. And it is one of the frustrating things when we're on a healing journey can be like, okay, but I've worked with this trauma, I've worked with this, and it still doesn't feel ready to open. Like, when am I going to get to go on that ride where I can just open the yes door and find all this wisdom? And it's like, yes. And maybe you can play with the parts that really want to hurry the process up. Like maybe that's a part you can take into the dark work and be like, yeah, I'm going to play with this part that's like, come on, hurry. Like, freaking get over it already. We've worked on this trauma for so long. Aren't you over it yet? Like play with the part that you can play with. But if there's a part that's like, no, these doors are shut, it's really important to honor that wisdom and just hold that with a lot of care and tenderness and love in the light.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to add to that is the our parts, what they're looking for is being seen for what they're really bringing.
Mm-hmm.
And if they aren't seen, if they're held as a problem, then naturally they're not going to open. It's like they shouldn't want to. It's right that they don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like when you honor your no to like, oh, I feel you, I'm not going to force you. Like when we were children, it was like, I you're crying, but we're gonna do it anyway because this is life and this is what you're gonna go to. But we can actually we can have a different experience now for our inner children. We can hold them differently and hold them in newer and even better ways. But when we really honor these internal parts of consent for them, which can feel like going away from deeper revelation or deeper spiritual journey and all of these things, which are so delicious, can feel so delicious. Um, it's actually gives once those parts feel like they will be honored in their no, they'll start trusting the journey with
Mm-hmm.
you more. And you'll start understanding how to hold them and what they need and ask for it so that it's the no can actually guide you into the yes, the real yes,
Mm-hmm.
which might look different than what you were like clamoring for or wishing for or begging for, because those parts might actually need their own holding. And Tani like pointing out, you can play with those parts, but those parts, oh, I know you really want to change and get better. I love that you want that. I love that. But right now, there's a really deep there's a part of me that just really needs to be loved and held, and that's what we're going to do right now. And you can hold it with me, and I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful how much you want to change and have us come out of suffering. Thank you so much. As opposed to, why do I have this constant need to get out of who I am? Stop. Right? Like now I can play with that, right? Please, please, and oh gosh, but I'm moving the energy because there's a yes in me. If there's a tensing, a tightening around the trigger, right, there's a no in me. And so before I can go to yes, and if I'm ever going to go to yes, I first have to honor that no.
Mm-hmm.
That it is just so powerful. I just feeling the, as you said, embodiment, but it's also that learning yourself as well, isn't it? Like you're really learning the language of your own self, which I find just powerful and beautiful in the way that you've languaged it. It's like
Love
because
that.
it sounds scary,
Yeah.
to step into this space and start going, oh, I'm going to start loving all these pieces and, and inviting them in. But it's like, but you're learning yourself in such a different way and accepting that so many different parts of yourself. And I guess what, again, I know I've said, of speaking from my own experience, this idea that you're not looking or not turning away from the bits of yourself that you just think, I don't think I'm ever going to get it right because I just continuously, after all the work I've done, I'm still judging myself. I'm still dealing with this perfection, and you just get tired because you're like, I don't know how many more books and workshops I've got in me.
Mhm.
So just kind of this, the way that you explain that and the energy of how you're, um, invested in the way of teaching people that let's just bring it all in and have a big dance party with everyone. I love that idea.
Mhm. What's
Yeah,
cool
sorry.
about it too, in that dance party and in that expression is that there's such for us it's and people we work with are the gifts that come through from the wound, not because you healed the wound, although that can be like you can grow yourself into someone who is really feels worthy of love, and that's awesome. But the gifts of not feeling worthy of love are all of it, like you learn to dance and play in power. And it gives you both gifts in empathy and understanding how others use their strategies for power. So instead of seeing a world of like tyrants and bullies and mean people and people who don't understand and why is everybody so awful, what is wrong with this whole world, when we get in touch with our own darkness and we understand that it's all stemming from love, like not like a mental construct, you actually see it. Like, actually, everyone is a needy wretch deeply wanting love. And the whole dance from war to abuse to beautiful works of art to exquisite orgasmic sex to everything, the whole picture, all of it is stemming from everyone's deep need and desire to feel love. And that's, to me, the magic of embracing our own darkness, embracing our shadow, and finding it on a visceral level, because it changes the world into a place of everyone seeking love rather than a place of like, what's wrong with the world and how do we change this so that people can feel loved? You know, it's like when we see it, we can meet it. It's like, oh, even you who's yelling at me is seeking love. Wow. And when we can see that, it changes our response to it into something that then changes how we experience the world. And so instead of like meeting that in conflict, we meet that in love, and it melts it in a new way. But we do it not because it's a belief, which I used to do. I used to believe this. And then I would try to meet it, but then parts of me would get tight. And I'd be like, why aren't you receiving my love? What's wrong with you? Or like, why are you being such a jerk about it? Like all the different like places that will trigger that then feel like take me to a place where I believed in my experience there was no love for me and no love in the world. And when it happens, I get to, if I, and as I'm practice, I can be like, okay, here it is. This is me. This is a younger version of Leslie. He didn't know. He totally, and it made total sense that he believed there was no love. Absolutely. I mean, oh my God, that thing that happened to you. Oh, and I hold and love that part, and I bring out all the different ways I played to try to get love through. And then I see now I have this incredible gift of empathy, of understanding others, but I also have this incredible gift of empathy of play. It taught me how to play. I like we're all making this stuff up anyway in connection, right? Like none of this is actually real. Language is a lie. The whole thing is just a big non-dual weirdness. We can't, where our sense is only taking the tiniest little fraction of the universe. We're barely experiencing anything. And yet at the same time, we're the whole universe. Like these eyes closed, the universe goes dark, right? Macro, micro, we get in touch with these profound spiritual states that only psychedelics or deep ecstatic religious experiences can take us into. That's the magic of our own darkness. Can actually, because that's actually all those experiences are just bringing us into our own unconditioned divine pre-existence to the identity of ourselves experience with this life, so that we take in sensation in the moment as it actually is, rather than these tiny little filters of persona that we run it through.
Whew. That was a big, that was a big one. Yeah. Um, I'm not even going to go. I'm not even going to go into that. It doesn't need anything else to be said there. I love that. I love all of that. But I do have one other little question that I'm just curious. And again, if it's too big, then that's okay. Where does the ego play a part in all of this?
Yeah. You want to
If you guys, I have something too.
go
But
for
you
it?
wanna go
Yeah.
for it? Okay. Um, well, first off, ego gets defined and held differently in different circles and spaces. So I'm just going to kind of wing it based on like a generalized definition. And it's interesting because in a way you could say that what we're doing here is really like exacerbating ego. It can be seen that way. We have a system of dark archetypes, which we call the darketypes. We have a whole map, we have a whole kind of explanation of how they relate to each other, how they play off each other. And we do a lot of work with going into those archetypes and embodying them, like we've been talking about, and kind of playing them out. And we've gotten the question in the past from people of like, wait, won't that make people more identified with them? and in that sense, kind of like, amplifying ego in a sense. But what we find is, for one, sometimes we do, it's almost like we kind of need to go through a period. It's almost like we need to go through our kind of inner adolescence where we're like, well, now I'm going to be this petulant teenager for a while and just like really, kind of do that, because that, like, it's like I need to kind of work that through to let it release out of my system. But oftentimes we find that when people actually go into the darkness and go into these things, even if it seems like taking on more identity, it actually allows us to then release identity. And one of the things that we almost don't even like to say this, because then people wind up going after it and it doesn't work when you go after it intentionally. But dark work oftentimes has a light work, like it will take you to the places of light work faster than light work, because it actually can take you to the places of like ego dissolution and really coming into just greater kind of non-dual connection with everything, and in a profound space of healing. But again, if you go into dark work with a light agenda, it doesn't work. The parts in there can smell that coming a mile off, and they're just like, oh, okay, you're coming in here trying to get rid of me, like, screw you. No. But there is this amazing thing that happens when we actually go into these places with love, because ultimately that's all that is here, that's all that is happening, right, is love. And so when we actually go in with love, things happen that are really surprising. And we can't say exactly what that will look like, because it's always different for every person in every context, but it's surprising what can happen in there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And generally the way we hold it is the ego is this is the game I choose to play in order to find reunion with existence, with everything. So it's the persona play that I do. And ego dissolution is to be like in the present moment, which we can achieve through lots and lots of work and undoing our patterns and thoughts, the tension, and just letting thoughts happen and be in the present moment. And like just a consistent, it's a never ending coming back to the moment, because the moment's always here and there's actually no time, right? So whatever that profound place of going to just divine union consciousness, you are me, I am you, I am in this, apparently in this body, but here we are, right? But then we can also find ego dissolution in the worst trauma, in the times when, like, oh, the question of life or death is like very present. Right? I'm in this car accident, I'm in war, I'm in this moment of I think I might die. And wrapped around these experiences, we oftentimes have a negative story, like, oh, that was terrible, I wish that hadn't happened. But if we could separate out that negative story and just be with the experience itself, oftentimes the worst things can bring us to those profound places that we could spend a lifetime struggling for, to find that level of presence and a lot of times that's why people are like flow junkies, doing really risk-taking things, is to have that experience, or actually trauma. They're going into the trauma of almost dying again and again in order to find that. And so I just want to like characterize, like, there's like the light of striving to have our conditioning, our way of being, just oriented towards the present moment. And then there's the dark of like embracing that even death and even pain and even be a spark to us awakening to the present moment, and be actually take us there in some ways, maybe not in like the lasting integration that we might be seeking, if there is in fact time and we are progressing, but in a sense of like in that moment, so we can have that experience in this moment. And then how do we integrate the fact that, wow, I actually really loved feeling the aliveness of nearly dying. You can even find that in those places. I'm not saying it's like an embrace of like a yes to mistreatment or abuse, but it's like, if these moments are arising anyway, as they will, we will all die, we will all experience pain. How do we meet those moments and the value and magic that's in there? So for me, the ego is everything in between that light and dark. Yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I just believe that, especially in a lot of the healing processes that are available to people, and especially if they're new to the spiritual concepts of dealing with their own psyches and personalities and archetypes, placing where that ego sits, because it comes up a lot, and it kind of gets a bad rap a lot too. There's that idea that we have to not have one, and these things that don't make sense. So I just felt it was important to place that in the process that you have there, which makes perfect sense. I love it.
One just additional piece that I would add,
Yeah.
we are dear lovers of Byron Katie. She's been doing her work for like about 17 years as a regular practice, and her work has deeply informed a lot in the background of our work as well. And I love she talks about the ego as like this darling child that's just like presenting all these ideas, and it's like, how would you like, what, you're trying to banish this darling child? Like, it's just like, oh, like, can you love it? Can you love your ego? And
Yeah.
essentially, what we're doing can be considered sort of drawing out very specific elements of that ego and getting a chance to love them each individually for what they bring up and present.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. That's a great visual as well. I love it. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm thinking that if someone wanted more of all of this, what might be the best thing for them to be able to access you, or things that your services that you have?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. The best way would be to check out our website, which is like www.lightdarkinstitute.com. It's just Light Dark Institute, not Light and Dark. Or if you just put in Light Dark Institute in Google, you'll find it easily enough. And there are a lot of things listed there under courses and offerings. We actually have a lot of different things available. We have an online course working with the darchetypes, and we're actually starting that again fairly soon. We have some in-person courses as well, foundations series of workshops that kind of take you gradually through it, and then an advanced track that goes kind of harder and faster. It's mainly aimed at facilitators. And then we do private work as well. Leslie does one-on-one coaching, and we do these deep dive experiences, which are 3 days, 2 nights, where we're working with one client or one couple at a time, plus several calls before and after to kind of hold that experience. So there's a whole range of things that people can do with us. And it really is a matter of, what depth you want to dive in and where you want to plug in. But there's a lot available on that website.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much. It's been incredibly enlightening, and I've loved every word. And it's definitely helped me to, just remind myself and remember my young child who likes to speak up quite often, actually, which is
So sweet.
she's very sweet sometimes.
Oh.
Oh, exactly. So yes, thank you so much. Was there anything else that you wanted to?
So I think there's maybe like layers of how we work. Like we talked about play, but I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can, all those things can be revealed on the website, but
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, that's great. There's a lot of information that we've just given everyone, so I'm sure their minds are blowing.
I really appreciate you bringing us, especially me, bringing us back to, questions your audience might have too.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much. And I've really appreciated your time. It's been absolutely wonderful. So
Thank you so much.
So good to meet you,
Thank
Carly.
you.
great to meet you
Thank you
too.
for having us here, and thank you to anybody who's listened this far with us.